What up, IDS Mob? So today, we're going to be answering a question from a woman who's going through a breakup with a recent partner of hers, and the partner in question cheated on her, but reached out to her 2 months later when he saw her out with another guy, but yet is now blocking her and is also hooking up with now another woman. And she kind of wants to know what the story is with that. And this comment was left under the video I did called A Lesson in Men's Libido and Testosterone for Women, where I talked about how testosterone affects men's, wanting physicality with women and other various things. And so she brings that up a few times in this message, asking if his libido has something to do with the way that he's treating her. So I'm going to answer that. Also, I've been getting a lot of questions as of late, whether it's through comments or my email box, and I absolutely love it. And my goal is to try to get to those questions and answer them on these shows. Now that said, because I have quite a few of these things to answer now, it could take a while if you're waiting for a video response. So if you'd like to get a faster response, I highly recommend signing up for my coaching. You can go to introvertdatingsuccess.com, click on the coaching tab, and we can set up a one-on-one phone consultation where I can answer your questions a lot quicker. Otherwise, I have no problem answering them on here, but it may not be in as timely of a manner. So again, introvertdatingsuccess.com/coaching. Go there, you can set it up, and I'll be happy to answer you. And I can also get really deep into your specific situation and talk to you in person to be able to really come to a solution about your dating life and how you can go forward, all right? So I'm gonna answer, and by the way, with this woman's question, we actually talked a little bit in the comments so I can get some clarification on some points. So I'll bring those up as they need to be brought up in this comment. So anyway, she goes, "Hi coach, just went through a breakup where my partner was unfaithful. And I wanna say, I'm very sorry you went through that. That is a very painful thing, obviously, and that is not something that you should have had to deal with." Continuing, she says, "Our connection was really nurturing, loving, and childish." She clarifies in a later thing, she said childish meaning it was playful. But clearly, the fact that he cheated on you means that it really was not as nurturing as you would have anticipated. Continuing, she says, "He learned about a fling I had before him and I got together and never forgave me and got angry. He doesn't have a healthy childhood, and towards the end of our relationship, he would talk to another girl and make her his confidant while staying out late with her doing who knows what." Well, to the first point, I talked on this show several times about how if you are hooking up with somebody else prior to laying down a commitment with any particular person, then that is fine. And she mentioned later on that the guy that she was having a fling with was a guy she was hooking up with before these two met. And then at the point that they started talking to each other, I think she was possibly still hooking up with this other guy, but she wasn't in a committed relationship with anybody. They just started talking, so they weren't boyfriend and girlfriend yet. And more importantly, I think she says later on, or she said it in a later thing, at the point where they became boyfriend and girlfriend, she cut things off completely with the other guy, which is what the woman should be doing. So as far as I'm concerned, lady, you did everything right. Now here's the thing, okay? And this isn't, I don't want to make a generalization, but oftentimes, you mentioned the part where he said he didn't have a healthy childhood. A lot of times, people that come from broken homes or who have like childhoods where like maybe the parent was not there for them or abandoned them, there's a lot, and those people in particular, what can happen is, well, a couple things can happen. One major one that can happen is that they're constantly, they think they're looking to get love and that they can handle it and that they find the right person, it'll all be great. But subconsciously, because they've been abandoned by the most important figures in their life, their parents, or they were mistreated in some way, they're always gonna be looking for a reason for the relationship not to work. So I'm looking at this guy and like you mentioned, and she mentioned down later on that he found out because I guess there's a mutual friend of theirs that had told him about it or whatever. But the point is that he found out about that, right? So what that says in his head now is she hooked up with somebody else, possibly while we were talking. Who's to say that she is not gonna leave me for this guy at some point in the future? Who's gonna say that she's not going to cheat on me with this guy because subconsciously he's already anticipating that something's going to happen that's going to cause him a great deal of hurt as it pertains to you and how faithful you are and whether or not you're going to stay with him. And so as a result of that, his body trauma response is going to preemptively be like, she's going to leave me. But at the same time, he's trying to fight that feeling with, but she seemingly likes me a lot and we get along great and she seems to only want to be with me. And those two things are just like fighting each other and fighting each other and fighting each other. And what I tend to find is that usually the side that had the bad childhood and the subconscious trauma response usually wins out. And they usually rebel and they get angry for no reason. And they try to talk to you about it, but they feel more able to talk about it with a confidant of theirs. And so that's why he went with this other girl and talked to her. As for what they were doing, we can only speculate. I don't want to say for sure if he was cheating on you or not, but what I can say is, at the very least, he was with that other woman creating an emotional bond and connection that was closer than what you two had. And that's equally as wrong as if they had actually hooked up and done stuff, which again, in my head, that probably happened. But again, we can only speculate that. So I want to speculate, but regardless, there was a bond being made with this other girl that was not you during this time. And that is not your fault. And it is not a thing he should have been doing. All right. So don't beat yourself up over that. Okay. If I didn't get into specifics of what his childhood trauma was, because I didn't ask that of her. So I don't know what that was, but whatever it was, we can say that is probably the reason that he's doing these various things. And it's not to say that people that don't have bad childhoods can't still do these type of things. I'm just saying it's more likely that that's bound to happen with people that were in tumultuous childhoods. Continuing, she says, my thing is to withdraw and ignore instead of fight. So I will say that that's one of those things that admittedly I've been bad at times too. Like if I'm talking to somebody and it seems to get really heated, I'm not a yeller, but I'm also a person that's like, if we can't talk calmly about this, I'd rather just leave because I know at that point, you're not going to listen to me and I'm going to feel weird trying to get you to see my point of view, knowing that it's in the process hurting your feelings. So I'm out. So that's something that, hey, we all got our things we got to work on. Okay. So that's something you might want to consider working on, but also that's one of those things where if you were in a healthy relationship, ideally the person you're with would be able to say, hey, don't withdraw. Let's talk about this. I'm open to hearing what you have to say. So go ahead and get it out. And it might hurt my feelings a little bit, but I assume it's coming from a loving place and I can take it because ultimately the goal is to be able to have both people at peace in the relationship. And so if you're not at peace, I can't be at peace. So I can take whatever criticism you have as long as it's constructive and you're not yelling at me and cursing me out. All right. So that's a way when you get into future relationships, you can say, hey, one of my biggest flaws is I tend to withdraw. So, I need to be able to have I feel like you're a safe space to go to be able to talk about stuff, even if it's upsetting. And that'll help me to not be so withdrawn. All right. Continuing, she says, he broke up with me and started hooking up with a girl. And later on in later conversations, she says that it was actually with a different girl than the one he was talking to in this particular instance. So she says, I wasn't giving him any attention post-breakup, which is good. You shouldn't. She says, why did he call 2 months post-breakup when he saw I was out with one of my male friends at the beach? All right, so here's a little thing about the male ego. And, I'm a guy, so I've been able to control this aspect of myself, but there's still tinges of it every so often, especially if I break up with a woman, right? Like, guys like to think that they're the absolute best that you will ever do, and that they have on some level ruined you for other men, meaning that like you're not going to find anybody else better and you're going to be so distraught that you will not actually be able to go out there and date ever again. So this is just something that the male ego tends to feel. So when on the off chance that we see you out with a new person, our first thought is like, how the freak did that happen? Like, that's not me. How is she able to get past me? Like, I'm me. I'm so great. And especially since he broke up with you, he's like, and I broke up with her, so she should be devastated. She should still be in a cave somewhere crying. So he saw you out, and that's what probably was going through his head, which is why he called you, because he wants to check up. Well, again, I'm speculating, so don't take anything I'm saying as gospel, all right? But if I'm guessing, what it is that he wants to see if he still has some hold on you by being able to call you and check on you to see how you sound on the phone, to maybe get an explanation of who that guy was, and just to check to see if he still is the guy that you're ultimately wanting him to come back to, you know? And again, it's a stupid thing. But, just like, women have things in their ego that in breakups, they don't like the idea of seeing their guy with a new person or that they got married or whatever this and that. Like, that happens on the other side too, okay? But I'm just telling you from the guy's side, that's probably what's going on. That doesn't mean he wants to get back with you. It just means that he's trying to check up on you because he wants to make sure that you're still miserable. Again, I'm speculating. Continuing, she says, the girl that I guess he was talking to messaged me, and then he blocked me on his most active social media, but not her. His Facebook still says he's in a relationship with me. Is this a libido thing? I would say it's more of a save face thing. This is why it's really hard with the whole Facebook status, trying to put up that you're in a relationship or not. I had a friend that dated this woman for like 3 or 4 years, and until he got engaged, he would not put up on Facebook that he was in a relationship with her. Why? Because it sucks when you break up and you got to take that stuff down, and people that are paying attention can see that and want to ask questions. What happened to so-and-so? Why aren't you two together? Blah, 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 blah. And some people just don't want to handle doing all that, so they'll just keep their relationship status as is. Again, not thinking that they're going to actually get back with the person, but just wanting to save face and not have to answer a bunch of questions from other people that'll see him take that down, right? So that's probably why that's happening. Why would he block me and not her? Who's to say? Like, he's probably keeping that door open because they never became anything serious, and maybe he wants to leave that door open so he can have a hookup with her sometime. Who's to say? Doesn't matter. And that's the thing too. I stress that because I think the human brain, when there's things happening, it wants to create a story that is a plausible enough story for it to make sense in our head. And what I've learned in my years of dating and just being on this earth in general is that sometimes, A, things don't make sense, and B, sometimes you just don't get the ending to that story. Like, you don't get an explanation, you don't get a follow through or a thought or nothing. It's just, this thing happened, why? Don't know. And I found in my life that it's been a lot easier not trying to always figure that stuff out. It's annoying sometimes to not get the end of the story, but it's kind of like when you're watching a TV show for like 3 seasons and then they end it on a cliffhanger and then the show gets canceled. Do you wish that you could at least have the show continue or give you an ending? You do. Are you going to always get it? No. And in those instances, you just got to move on. Same thing with some dumb crap that's happening that you don't get an explanation to. Continuing, she says, and when I tried to message him about it, he never opened it. I want to say it's just a libido thing. I'll get to that more. I want to say it's just a libido thing, but he seems loyal to her, whereas through the end of our relationship, he left the door open. We were together almost a year. What's going on in his mind? Why would he do all this? It's all so confusing. All right, so I will say this. In reference to the libido thing, it's not necessarily a libido thing that's happening here, with one important exception. In the video that I made about testosterone, I talked about how there was a trans man that said that when they were living their life as a woman, let's say they saw somebody on the bus or train and they thought they were attractive, they'd go through this whole thing like, oh, I wonder like how they got to this bus, and I wonder what it'll be like to do X, Y, and Z, and blah, blah, blah. And it'd be all this like narrative of like, how can we eventually meet, and how can we get together, and what do I have to do to like be in their pathway so they know that I'm attracted to them, and yada, yada, yada. And then this person said that they started taking testosterone hormones to become, to live as a man, and they discovered that the whole narrative of what they were trying to do as it pertains to women just went away. Like, there was no narrative, there was no story of how they get together. They saw the woman and were just like, oh, I want to do that. And so I say that because I don't want you to stress about what story he had going on in his head. Most likely, the easiest narrative that he had going on is he heard the thing about you hooking up with some other person, trauma reaction. He was no longer attracted to you, and he started talking to other women. And he's like, he was fighting you about, oh, you hooked up with somebody, this and that. And the first woman he saw that was relatively attracted, he started talking to her and probably hooked up with her. And then when you guys broke up for officially, then he met another girl. Oh, she's hot. And they hooked up. That's it. That's really like, that's all it takes for a guy to want to bang somebody. There's no like, well, let me get to know them first and let me see what they're about and maybe we have the same likes and dislikes. No, it's, oh, she's hot. Is she agreeing to do me also? She is, let's do some stuff. It really is that simple. And it's hard to explain that to women because you all are so, you're not that men don't have emotions that are tied to sex. It's just usually for us, at least my experience, it's been like you hook up with somebody and then the feelings tend to come later, hopefully. But women's narrative typically is I want to build up some level of, it ain't gotta be like all the way there because you guys can also do one night stands and stuff like that too. But there's gotta be some level of trust and some kind of feeling there, some kind of thing of like, oh, if this hookup works, then like maybe we can go to these other places in order for that hookup to happen. And for guys, more often than not, it doesn't have to be that way. So in terms of the libido part would come in whereby he wouldn't necessarily have to have a narrative to hook up with these various women other than he got mad at you, lost attraction, found somebody else attracted, and wanted to bang him. Sorry, that's like really the end of the story. So don't be stuck in your head. This isn't a confusing scenario. He's no longer interested in you. He probably still wants to see that you are interested in him because again, ego. But in terms of like why he's doing these things, please don't stress yourself out about that because I could tell you there's probably not a lot of narrative going on. Like it's not like he had a thought out plan of like, gee, how can I like ruin this girl's life? I know I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z, or how can I hook up with these various people? Well, let me see if I can like find a woman first and then I can build up a like for her and then I can, see if she's about something. Like none of that's going on in his head. I'm telling you, it's really simple for us, all right? So don't stress yourself out. This is a scenario, it didn't work out, and I know it's tough. Hey, even as a guy, I've been through breakups where I've dated somebody for like a year, 2 years, 3 years, 6 years. And at the point that a breakup occurs, whether it's me initiating it or them initiating it, there's a level of downtime that happens where it's just like, it sucks. I wish I was still with that person. Why couldn't it work out? All this other stuff. And hopefully for you, seeing that this guy cheated on you, seeing this guy wasn't really stable to begin with, even though there's still a part of you that's feeling feelings for him, hopefully you're able to eventually move on from that and start dating guys that will ideally, one, have a more positive childhood. This is a very important note for you also because, and I'm guilty of this too, where it's like, you meet people that had bad childhoods and you think, oh, I can be their hero. I can show them that people aren't mean to them or bad and they can be different and they can be loving. And as hard as it is to say, that is not on you to do. That is on them to do the work that they need to do to get past their childhood trauma, because what's gonna happen is you're gonna try to play Miss Superhero and you're gonna find that your efforts more often than not are going to fall on deaf ears or fall away with a person that has not yet dealt with their stuff, all right? So try to find men that haven't gone through massive childhood trauma. Like people are going to go through stuff throughout the course of their life. So it's not saying that you can't find somebody that like never had anything wrong ever in their life, but there is something to be said for like trying to find men that, for example, came from a good, had a 2-parent household where the parents actually loved each other, or who come from a family where they were able to sit down and talk about issues. Okay. And these are things you should be learning during that 3 months of time. I always tell guys, it takes women 2 to 3 months to fall for a guy because that's the time that they're doing their due diligence. So spend those 2 to 3 months with these guys you're dating or are going to be dating, doing your due diligence. Ask these questions about their family, about how they treat others, about their friendship group, because those are going to be things that are going to help you better determine if this person's going to be able to hear something like, oh, you actually hooked up with somebody before you met them, and they'd be perfectly fine with it. So hopefully this helps you out. Now for the rest of you, if you have a question you'd like me to answer on one of these shows, you can write to me at HarryWilmington@gmail.com. You can leave a comment down below the video. If you want your question answered faster, you can sign up for a one-on-one phone consultation by going to introvertdatingsuccess.com and clicking on the coaching tab. Also, if you find these videos to be helpful to you, you can click on the tip jar tab or click on one of the links below to leave a monetary thank you. I also take super thank yous apparently on YouTube now as well, so you can leave one of those. All that stuff helps out. It also helps out if you subscribe to this channel and give a like to this video, all right? I'm Harry Wilmington. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. I'm out. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Introvert Dating Success Podcast. Visit us at introvertdatingsuccess.com for more great tips on attracting women using your natural introvert charm. Oh, yeah.